Welcome to the Frozen Layer podcast, brought to you by Zentech Consultant CA, where we will discuss all things related to the CAD, BIM, and construction markets, with a little humor thrown in for good measure. I am your host, Steve Fahey. Let's get into it. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Frozen Layer podcast. Our goal with the Frozen Layer is to share valuable information that our CAD, BIM, and construction clients will find useful and help them increase productivity, just like freezing a layer in CAD. I have a special guest joining me today, Rick Ellis from BricsCAD. Rick is the BricsCAD Product Owner for Civil Survey. Rick, welcome back to the Frozen Layer.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate you having me.
Always nice to have you on and chat with you. You've been here before. As you know, I like to start with you providing a quick overview in case somebody is listening to the podcast for the first time and this is the one they choose. It helps them have a better understanding of our guests. So if you wouldn't mind giving a quick overview.
Sure. Well, Steve, as you know, I've been in the civil survey industry in one fashion or another for about 30 years at this point. Originally as an end user, back in the days of CAD in DOS and using things like Sofdesk or VCA, and then as a user, a CAD manager, and then moved on and worked for an Autodesk reseller for a while. I've been a consultant for quite a few years, also written a number of books related to AutoCAD and civil survey software. And then now I'm the product owner for the civil survey industry at BricsCAD.
Excellent. So, well-traveled road, it seems. That's the one thing I know. I like how you say almost 30 years, because if you mention how many decades you touch on, I'm like, I've been in 5 separate decades dealing with this. Like, no, that doesn't sound good. I'm not going to say it that way.
I totally agree.
Don't need that much experience. So, as you know, we just recently went through the latest launch of BricsCAD, which is what we're here to talk about today, BricsCAD V25. I was quite surprised when I look back. This is actually the 7th release from BricsCAD that I've been part of as being involved with their reseller channel after spending 29 years in the Autodesk channel. So time, as they say, it certainly goes by quickly.
Absolutely.
The new features they add in continue to impress. I think they do a great job of listening to their users and trying to bring features to the market that are going to benefit people. I'd like you to give us your highlights from the civil survey side for 25. What impressed you, and just mention them point form maybe, and then we'll get into some more detail on each one later on.
Sure. And, Steve, like you said, one of the real focuses we have at BricsCAD is listening to customers and trying to focus on what the customers are actually using and giving them practical tools that make a difference in how quickly they can get their drawings and their products created there. So on the civil survey side, that was how our roadmap for V25 was driven, like it always is. So we have really focused for V25 on the surveyor. A lot of these tools will also apply to and benefit civil engineers as well. But on the survey side, we have done a lot of work with our sister company, Leica, and just streamlining that process to get data into BricsCAD faster and easier. We have also done quite a bit of work on the just survey drafting tool side of things. Drafting for surveyors is kind of unique as opposed to other industries like mechanical or architecture. We have unique needs there, and we want to build tools that are built for surveyors, not for surveyors to use some other tool from some other industry and kind of force it into their workflow. And that includes things like a curve calculator, labeling, more transparent commands, and so on with that. And then we did some work on tin surfaces to add surface smoothing, and also some really exciting stuff as far as sharing surface data between drawings.
Excellent. Yeah, it's I'm glad you mentioned sister company Leica. I always like to take advantage of these times to remind people that Hexagon is the parent company of Leica and BricsCAD, and leads to some good integration there. So getting right into that side of it, the BricsCAD Leica connection, they're certainly improving the connectivity and the crossover there. What details can you provide to give us a little more insight into the features that have been added into BricsCAD V25 related to Leica?
Sure. Well, Steve, one of the things that I mentioned before is obviously we talked to a lot of customers about this. And one of the things that was, honestly obvious and maybe even a little embarrassing on our part is when we were asked by customers that know that we're part of Hexagon, Leica's part of Hexagon, and we get the question like, well, why isn't it easier for you to bring data out of Leica equipment and bring it into BricsCAD? Yeah. And so we took that really to heart and said, our goal is to make BricsCAD the easiest platform for you to bring survey data into from Leica equipment. And we had a good start with that for V25. We introduced a command that basically allows you to take a DWG that was exported from Leica Infinity. So Leica Infinity users out there may be familiar with being able to export to a DWG. In newer versions of Infinity, you'll see that there's an option to export to a BricsCAD DWG. And that BricsCAD DWG, what Leica did was we worked with them to add data behind the scenes, extended data to their objects when they export them. That's information that we can see in BricsCAD when we open it up. And basically, as a user, you're going to have one click to run the Leica import command. It's going to look at your drawing and find these objects, ask you if you want to keep them or delete them after you convert them, and then it's just going to convert over your points, line work, and surfaces into the BricsCAD equivalent of those. So you're going to see exactly what you see on the Leica Captivate and Infinity side of things. It's going to look the same way in BricsCAD, and you can just immediately go.
That's a great time saver and really increases your efficiency. So that's a nice feature.
Well, and one of the things that we did with it I think is really interesting is the survey industry's talked about field to finish for decades now. And what field to finish typically meant was that you added all of these line work codes and things to your survey data. And then when you brought it into CAD, you reprocessed that information and connected the dots. Yeah. The change we're making here may sound somewhat subtle, but I think it really has a big impact because we're not reprocessing the data. If you're using Leica Captivate in the field and using the Leica command codes, you're going to see the line work drawn on your data collector. Yeah. You're going to see that same line work in Infinity when you bring it into Infinity. And instead of reprocessing it, when we bring it into CAD, which introduces opportunities for error, also means extra setup and additional time, we're just using the exact same line work and passing it through during this process. So we're not reprocessing. We're skipping those opportunities for things to connect differently and giving you a much more efficient and much more accurate process.
Yeah, and removing the availability for manual errors to be introduced.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also it means that you're using those Leica codes on your data collector, so your users in the field are going to be seeing that real time and can catch things and make adjustments and corrections there as well. So you're not having to go back and forth as much.
Excellent. Well, it definitely sounds like a nice feature. It leads me into my next question. What about the clients who are not using Leica gear? Obviously, you explained that very well, so we understand what features they won't have direct access to. But what are you thinking for the future, and how is this going to work for someone who's maybe using a product outside of the Leica family?
Certainly. I mean, we obviously know there are a lot of surveyors out there who aren't using Leica equipment, and this was just a logical starting point for us, because since there is this close relationship, all being under the same umbrella within Hexagon with us and Leica, it made the most sense to start there. And to be honest, the Leica team came to us and asked for it as well. So we had customers asking us for this, and Leica saying, we want you to do this with us. So it was an easy and natural fit for us to start there. That doesn't mean that we don't intend in the future to look at the similar options for the Trimbles and Topcons and other data collectors and hardware vendors that are out there. Some of it depends on how closely they want to work with us, what we can do, but there are certainly a lot of things we can do regardless. There. For V25 specifically, though, the rest of the stuff that we're going to talk about, all of the drafting tools, the labeling tools, the work with tins and things like that, those are all going to benefit everybody, because you can still import points from a CSV file. So we're not leaving everyone out. It's just we have some extra for the Leica users.
And like you said, it's a logical place to start, where it's all under the same umbrella of corporate ownership, and it's always nice to make the first attempt at doing something like this with an in-house brand, so you can learn and get all of the hurdles out of the way, so that when you do step out and potentially work with Trimble or Topcon, you've already got a lot of the learning done, and it'll go a lot smoother dealing with those outside vendors.
Absolutely. And we're not done with what we're going to do with Leica either. This was really phase one for us, and you can expect to see some really exciting stuff that we have planned with them in the future as we make that connection even more real-time and dynamic.
Excellent. Look forward to that. So one of the new points you mentioned, survey drafting tools and the new curve collector. I'd like you to give us a little more detail on that, so that everybody understands where the product is coming from in that direction, and what benefits there are to them.
Well, if for any of your users who have used BricsCAD V24, you probably saw some of the transparent commands that we have on the civil survey workspace there. And basically what those commands allowed you to do was input coordinates and line work data in a more traditional civil engineering and surveying format. For example, if you're drawing polyline and you wanted to draw that line by bearing and distance instead of just typing in coordinates, there's a bearing and distance transparent command that would let you enter it that way. So you're using the same line or polyline commands that you're used to in CAD with a civil survey flavor to that, so that we don't have to convert data on our own. Now that was kind of the first version of those for us. We've improved them so they are now persistent. And what I mean by that is once you start the transparent command within another command, it stays in it until you turn it off. So you don't have to re-enter that every single time. Because if you had something like a legal description that you're entering, you probably don't want to enter bearing and distance for after every single coordinate. You don't want to reissue the transparent command. You want to just continue in that same prompt. Yeah. So they automatically do that now. That was kind of a no-brainer with that. But we also added a couple transparent commands as well, like angle and distance and deflection and distance to that list. And then we created a new curve calculator because, again, surveyors often get data in lots of different formats, and you probably have enough information to define a curve, but it may not always be the same type of information. So the curve calculator now is basically just a new dialog box. It will let you enter, radius, delta, length, whatever curve information you have. It'll calculate the values for the curve. It'll show you all of that in the dialog box. And then it will let you just automatically draw that on the screen. So you don't have to take these results and copy and paste them to the command line or anything. What you do is, there's a button to just, in the dialog box, to just draw it. And you can either pick a point to draw it from, or you can pick an existing entity, and it'll automatically connect to the end of that entity and be tangent to it. So very interactive, very, heads up. For instance, it doesn't ask you, is the curve clockwise or counterclockwise or something like that, like a lot of other programs do. It puts a preview on the screen, and you just move your cursor to one side of the line or other that it's at, and it will show you the direction it's going to go. And so it's very graphical and interactive. Yeah,
it's a nice command, and for anybody who would like to see it live in action, there is a breakout session on the Brics' website that shows most of the features that we're discussing here today, if you'd like to go watch those. So, all right, so we're going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsor, and when we return, we're going to start to discuss tin surfaces. We'll be right back. Today's Frozen Layer podcast is being brought to you by our Zentek Training Division. Zentek has a variety of training options available, from public courses, private group courses, on-demand courses, as well as custom courses to meet all your design needs. We offer training in Bluebeam, Autodesk, Procore, and BricsCAD, with options from beginner through to advanced. To learn more, visit our website, zentekconsultants.net, or give us a call, 866-824-4459, or you can email sales@zentekconsultants.net. Zentek Consultants CA for all your technology consulting needs. Welcome back. We are talking with Rick Ellis from Brics today about the enhancements for the civil survey clients and the improvements made in BricsCAD V25. So before the break, I mentioned that we were going to discuss tin surfaces. BricsCAD, obviously you know better than I do, Rick, that the tin surfaces in BricsCAD has been a very efficient tool and has been in there for a few releases now. One of the new features in V25 is tin surface smoothing. Would you mind giving me a little bit of an overview on what that offers clients and the benefits they can receive from it?
Sure. Well, Steve, I really appreciate your compliment there on the tin surfaces. It's one of the features that I'm really proud of, that the work that the team has done on that. It is, the speed and the productivity that we're seeing out of the tin surfaces, the ability to open larger and larger data sets with that is really making a difference for our clients. And we made a couple of additions for V25. Surface smoothing is one of those. And it really is part of the answer to the argument of, do you smooth the surface or do you smooth contours? Because we all know contours aren't, angular, and triangles are. And since tin surfaces are made out of triangles, they're naturally going to have contours with sharp edges. And I know there are plenty of people who feel that Smoothing contours is the correct way to address that and not touching the surface, and others feel that smoothing the surface and updating the actual thin surface definition itself is a better way to approach that. For V25, we added the latter there, surface smoothing. And basically what it does is it goes through an algorithm that you get to control as a user, where you can define that you would smooth either the entire surface or just an area, and you give it a grid spacing. And that algorithm adds points into the tin surface definition on that grid spacing that smooth the overall surface itself. And once the surface is smooth, the contours, of course, reflect that. And since the surface was edited, that means anything that you would have sampled through that surface, like a profile, would match up exactly with the contours. I know a lot of customers complain that when you do contour smoothing, if someone really compared the contours to a profile, they don't match it, in some cases, depending on how much smoothing there was.
Yeah, you know, some people like to leave them in the original triangular format, but I think graphically, I think the smooth surface is more pleasing and a little more representative as to what you probably find out there.
Exactly. And what we've done really gives the user the choice in that. They can smooth it or not. And that smoothing becomes part of the tin definition, just like adding points or break lines becomes part of the tin definition. So it can be modified later on if you decide you want to add more or less points or smooth more or less, or you can turn it off. So you can literally sit there and toggle it on and off on your surface and see the difference in the contours. So very flexible.
Yeah, no, it's nice that you left the ability in there for the client to choose which method they want to do. And they said the ability to create a boundary and smooth within the boundary and leave outside normal is also a nice feature, because you don't have to do all or nothing.
Yeah, and that's really important here because surface smoothing is adding points to the surface. So if you don't have to add points everywhere, it's probably best not to, because it is just going to increase the size of the surface. So that geographical limitation is important.
Absolutely. Another enhancement that you've added related to tin surfaces is sharing tin surface data between drawings. This one seems particularly useful to me, and just wondering if you could explain how you see it being beneficial to people.
Certainly. Now, this has been a big request from clients, and you probably are tired of hearing me say that over and over again, but it goes back to what I said first, which is we've focused our roadmap on what our customers are asking us for. And the reality is most survey and civil engineering jobs probably shouldn't be one drawing. The data just becomes too big, and if you want to have multiple people access that data at the same time, you can't have it all in one drawing file. And you also don't want to just copy your tin surface data, because what happens when it changes? How do you put all those pieces back together if that's the case? So we introduced a command that was specifically for sharing surfaces between drawings. And our goal with this was not only to be able to share that surface data, but to make the process really straightforward and easy to use for the user. So the whole process boils down to just running a command to reference data. It'll ask you to browse and select the drawing where the surface that you want to reference in resides, kind of like an XREF. But when you pick that drawing, it's just going to show you a dialog box with a list of all the surfaces that are in that file. You can go down and pick and choose which ones you want to reference in, click OK, and you're done. that surface is going to show up in your current drawing as a lightweight read-only version. So you can't make changes to it there because you need to make those changes back in the original source drawing. But you can change the display of the surface, of course. You can change, contour interval, or if you show triangles or not, and those types of things. And you can do all of your other tasks that you would want to do with it, things like labeling or volume calculations or sample a profile or anything like that.
Excellent.
And then of course it's dynamic. So if that original surface changes, very similar to an XREF, you would get a balloon notification in the lower right corner of your screen that says your data reference has changed. Do you want to update it? You click on that, and the update will come in.
Mm. That's a nice thing to have. You want to have your integrity of the data when you're sharing it between the drawings. And
exactly. And of course, the question people will ask, the minute we have this is, well, what about other things like alignments or points or other objects? And the answer is that we're absolutely looking at this same technology to expand in the future. I can't comment on when you're going to see that exactly, but a lot of the framework there makes sense to be able to use with other objects as well.
That'd be nice to see. Another new feature for 25 that I'd like to get your feedback on is labeling tools.
Yes. Many of you probably know, if you've looked much at BricsCAD in the past, that we didn't have basic civil and survey labeling tools. Things like labeling lines and curves with their bearing and distance or their curve information there. And the short answer is that's what we added. Very similar, if you've looked at in the past, the tools that we had for labeling points. We built on a lot of that technology and are using it with our standard line and curve labels now. It is essentially setting up some sort of a style to label those so that you can build consistency throughout your drawings. And these labels are, of course, all dynamic. So if the geometry changes, they will update. This works not just for labeling our polylines, lines, and curves. It also labels the new 3D strings that were introduced in V25. So in that case, you can label vertical information on those lines as well. Things like grade or slope or start and end elevations, things like that.
Excellent. Nice tools to have.
Yeah.
We've discussed a couple of times in the past. We actually did a podcast on point clouds, and we did a webinar on point clouds as well within BricsCAD. I think of all the CAD tools out there for you look at BricsCAD as a BricsCAD Pro engine and the ability that it has to handle point clouds and how well it does dealing with them, I think is just truly impressive. And I think more clients should be taking a look at BricsCAD for that requirement within their organization. I know that with V25 there was a new feature added on point cloud classification. Would you mind giving some detail on what that classification tool is and how you see it benefiting?
Sure. Now, in V24, there was point cloud classification was introduced in BricsCAD. And this was an automated process. It was another one of those initiatives that was done in conjunction with Hexagon and leveraging some of their internal point cloud classification models that they have. And it's an automatic process. Basically, if you have a unclassified point cloud, you can run this classifier on it, and it will add the classification based on its algorithm. And with any automatic operation like that, you're not going to be 100% right 100% of the time, especially when you're talking about something like a scan for a point cloud, because the quality of those scans varies from one point cloud to another. So what we added in V25 is the ability to manually classify points. And where I see it for us on the civil survey side of things is if you've got a scan of a site that is not classified, you would run the automatic classifier on it. Let it do the heavy lifting for you, but there's going to be some cleanup that needs to be done. You're going to have some stragglers. For instance, one of them, a file that I classified a few weeks ago, it did really a good job, except the roofs all got classified as ground. So they showed up really easily that they were there and they were wrong. So now with this tool, I can just go in and easily select those areas and edit or apply their classification. So it's just the manual cleanup that we need to go along with the automatic process.
Yeah, well, whenever you have automatic, you still have to go through and verify, because the computers are good, but there's always going to be something that you need to catch. Yeah,
exactly.
All right. Well, Rick, I think we covered a lot of material here today, and we really appreciate you getting into the features and letting us know how they are going to make our clients more efficient and how they benefit the client for their use. I'd like to invite clients, anybody who's listening, if you'd like to try BricsCAD, we have a 30-day trial available on our Zentech Consultants website, zentechconsultants.net. Feel free to take a look at the site and download the trial. And all of our contact information is on the site as well. If you have any questions during the trial, feel free to reach out. Rick, I'd really like to thank you for joining me again today on the Frozen Layer podcast.
Oh, thank you, Steve. I appreciate you having me.
Until next time, keep freezing those layers.